Does Jordan Peterson believe in God? So even if this question is put to its most complicated form, Jordan Peterson should be able to answer this question. And that's the reason why I'm doing this video today, to take it to its esoteric understanding, to its Gnostic understanding, to its magic understanding, to its philosophical understanding. This question: do you believe in God? And so what does believe mean? Believe, etymologically, is to hold dear when you take it back to the Proto-Germanic. The be part of it is to be. Really, to hold something is to be. But when you say dear, dear means care, means value. The prime value is actually the Creator himself. So to believe, in the most esoteric primordial sense, is to be, live, God. To be, even though that compound doesn't break down exactly to live, it does mean to hold dear, to hold value, to hold love, to hold life, to be, live in God. Or does he dwell within you? Because to live is a living place, a being, dwelling place. So you can go back to the Heideggerian understanding of these, the ground phenomena of being. Does God dwell within you? To believe and to have authority are kind of the similar. To have authority, to have belief, especially when you're talking about God. Authority is to be capable of, and to know. To what degree does Jordan Peterson be divine, actually have the presence of God with him as a mystical fact of being? To what degree does he know God? As Jung said once, I don't believe, I know. And is he capable of being someone who can articulate it, meaning bringing that magic of knowing and being into art, into Hermetic philosophy, so it unpacks it for someone else? So to what degree is he capable of doing that? Even the most basic and young human being has a sense in which they believe something, they understand something, they are capable of something, and they think something. But when we look at that, let's talk about the esoteric understanding of those four things. So the first is what we call belief is the mystic sense, which is spiritual touch. It's the direct, essentially all the way up to a point, interaction from God and the mystic. So it's not seeing it, it's analogous to physical touch. It's like another sense that mystics have, and they can feel a pressure, and also valuatively and emotively. The love, they feel the love directly. That's the equivalent of what is religion. That's the esoteric version, because all religion is based on mystic experience fundamentally. Then it becomes religion after that. So that is esoteric religion. The Gnostic sense is essentially esoteric theology. It's the trunk from which theology actually comes from. That sense is more like spiritual hearing. So it means you're not in a direct touch with God, but you are in the same relation as listening in silence, like you would listen, but it's not necessarily hearing. It's the state of receptive expectation. That's what that second sense is. It's equivalent to basic understanding. The next sense is the magic sense, which is to the degree to which you are capable of something, capable of bringing those two other divine things into something else. And that is essentially esoteric ritual, esoteric, it's sacred magic. The last sense is the Hermetic philosophical sense, and these all have to exist together to function as a being. Really, that the truth of that is esoteric philosophy. Exoteric version of that is philosophy. And so, okay, this is a bit of a digression from what Peterson was talking about, but that's what belief is, to be all those things together. And to Hermetic philosophical understanding is to think. It's the intellectualization of the intellect of the other three. It can't exist without the other three. It is a synthesis of all of them. To what degree, not only does Peterson believe in God, but not only that, does he even have any authority, because he's not doing all four of these things. He sees it from the pragmatist point of view, which means the other parts, not only the philosophical, the fourth, his synthesis, the other three are possessed by the pragmatic intellectualization. So he hasn't used like a Bergsonian intuition to get outside of his intellect to have a raw experience of the other things. He's backward, retroactively programming into them of the other three. So he has the exact same possession of an ideology as he accuses all the other people of. It's just this pragmatic philosophical system which he retroactively uses to understand texts that can't be understood. They can to some degree be understood in that way, but it's the lowest form of it, as mere temporal utilitarian advice for patterns that pop up again and again and only began to exist as a postulate after the fact, as a rather than being an eternal form. His archetypes are just basically evolutionary. And so to what degree does he know God? To what degree does he have a mystical is he God, in the sense that he says act as if it's true? Well, no, because you're throwing the postulate of, you're throwing the utilitarian pragmatic postulate into the first thing. And so you're cutting off your experience from that. So that might be a bridge, and a lot of us got a lot of benefit from Peterson. I'm not saying that he hasn't helped a lot of people, but he needs to begin learning from the people that perhaps he's helped, and to actually do the thing that makes a great thinker, which is to fully go into this understanding in the sense of, all it takes is, as the Master, the Lord said, is it, will you watch with me for an hour? That's what he's saying. Concentration without effort for an hour a day to awaken these deeper layers of being. I mean, you've read Heidegger, Jordan. You understand that this stuff can be done. To what degree has the Christ child entered him? I would say almost nothing at all. He is a modern, his world is a modern, I think, just like Hegel's absolute got thrown into this as a concept, I think he's got a concept in the way, a utilitarian pragmatic in the way of the raw, factical, mystic fact of being that he could get to with concentration without effort and Bergsonian intuition and going through the tough work of doing that to dissolve this concept he has in the way, to escape his intellectual understanding, which is the moon. It's reflective. It's a principle you have to escape. You can't use intellect to get outside intellect. You can't use all your biblical interpretations to get outside intellect. You need to use fundamentally something else, which is the sympathetic intuition to get out of it. As the Chinese say, turn the light around to its source. The next thing, to what degree does he know God? Not just, which is part of the belief question. To what degree does he know God gnostically? When Jung was asked this question, do you believe in God? It was very easy for him to say, I don't believe, I know. I know God, which means I've seen, which means he's had from the alchemical process, he went through what Peterson actually needs to do, make the effort to do. So he could easily say that, and he doesn't say that. So he doesn't know God either. Jung, we know from reading into the notes of the texts of the Mysterium, Conjunction, we know that he had that awakening that Thomas Aquinas had when he finished writing his alchemy book. He also basically had the end of purification when he finished going through the process that's demonstrated in the black and red books. Gnostically to know. He got that at the end of his experience from all the work he did. And you could say he did that by analogy, by symbolism, on top of the experience, which you could account to an active imagination, but as concentration without effort. Deeper, though, in terms of falling into a sleep, right? So Jung experienced that. Peterson hasn't. He's just replaced it with something else. So he neither knows God nor has moved towards God, as in to be, to know. So he doesn't have that in the sense of authority on the matter. To what degree is he capable of divine acts? What degree is he capable of bringing those other two things into a piece of artwork? Again, we have to say no, he isn't, because he's retroactively using a philosophical system that's right at the end of nihilism, which Nietzsche identified, which is pragmatism. He's using that in all his analysis. He can't use contemplation and meditation to unpack arcana like someone like Pajot can, and like a hermeticist can, uses the synthesis of conscious and non-conscious in concentration without effort, in contemplation, to unpack, to get from the symbol to the arcana that's behind it, which is how you see a deeper understanding than just a evolutionary analysis or what can be penetrated by intellect. He doesn't have the occult understanding of it. He doesn't have the ground understanding of it. He's got the factical one, which means it's the understanding based on all of what Nietzsche was trying to escape, which was the past. It's all given form to what has been, but in a bad way. Yes, it's a truth of religion, but very deceptive, because all the devils understand, all the ideological systems that he talks about that are bad all carry a truth with them. And that's why they're dangerous. That's why the Orthodox Christians are right when they even talk about other religions being demonic, because they have truth in them. But because they're not ultimately connected to the outside and the divine as beings, they become technical and they actually hold you away from it in your superiority. So I would say to him, so what's his understanding then? I would say he doesn't have authority. He has the authority of worldly scientism, what that's given to him. And he's using that in the material. He's using that to analyze the material, this understanding, which most of us can do now, right? It's a pragmatic analysis. It's an evolutionary analysis. It's a procedural analysis. You're in a position of numbers authority, but he doesn't have the authority of true being. He doesn't have the authority of way, truth, and life, which break down to value, being, and will, divine will. He doesn't have that authority of to be capable of, and to know the divine. So if you're going to talk about the divine and the sacred, I'm sick of these materialists talking about this stuff, these object-oriented ontology people. That ontology, it's because it's so complicated that people don't comment on it, but it is Satanism. As Dugan says, it's Satanism. Temporality does have hyper-objects that are not divine. They're called demons. Hyper-objects that aren't outside, but are temporal, as Nick Land would call them, a temporal demon. Again, he's helped a lot of people, but him and people like Vervaeke too, John Vervaeke, are dangerous because they stop people from progressing forward. He's a bridge, but how many people are stuck where he is because he's not doing it himself, because he's not listening to how people have progressed past him to the source of being, to the source of value. You're after values. The ground of value is the divine. You can't talk about values unless you have a relationship with the prime value, because in the final analysis, the value is an entity. You can't create your own values. Why? Because values are, in the last analysis, in the deepest layers, God himself, the entity. A value is a propositional, conceptual creation of the postulate that we are, but try to become the thing that you're analyzing. Don't just do it from the postulate, the sort of modern perspective. Get outside of your own intellect and do the thing that Jung did. Don't just talk about Jung. Do and take the risk of that. I mean, you're at the end of your life now. Wouldn't it be better to do that and authentically try and engage with the religion and find a way in, like the great Hermeticists do, the Christian Hermeticists have, from a lofty intellect that could keep you out of it? There are ways.